Now, there are less than 48 hours left for the ceasefire between Iran and America to expire. There are no clear indications that the truce will be extended, and Iran still hasn't confirmed whether it is sending a delegation to Pakistan or not for a second round of the peace talks. US President Donald Trump is keen on a deal. In fact, he just gave an interview a short while back where he said that the United States is in a very strong negotiating position and it will end up with a great deal with Iran. Now, he's been saying similar things for a while now. Remember, on Monday, he had put up a message on social media which started with how his new Iran deal will be much better than the JCPOA, or the Iran nuclear deal, which was signed by former President Barack Obama. But if talks or a ceasefire extension aren't confirmed, that implies that this war will resume. Donald Trump seems to be preparing the U.S. for that possibility as well. During this interview, he said that he does not want to extend the ceasefire and that America is ready to go in militarily. He's also put up this short message on social media where he's accused Iran of having already violated the ceasefire numerous times. On the other side, Iran's Chief Justice has accused the U.S. of the very same thing.
It is possible that our negotiations may genuinely lead nowhere and that it will be necessary for us to carry out those actions again. They themselves violated the ceasefire, and Iran will certainly respond. This very maritime blockade they are talking about is, without doubt, a clear violation of the ceasefire.
Iran's state broadcaster, the IRIB, has consistently been saying that Iran has not agreed to the talks yet. And it recently announced that no Iranian delegation has traveled to Pakistan so far. In fact, it also stressed that neither a primary nor a secondary team has gone to Pakistan yet for any sort of mission. After some initial confusion, the U.S. announced that Vice President J.D. Vance would lead the American delegation again. In fact, Vance, along with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, are expected to head to Islamabad for talks with Iran. But whether they leave before Iran confirms its participation is still in doubt. Islamabad, meanwhile, has been ready to welcome both the parties again. Pakistan's capital has been locked down. Security has been deployed everywhere. The Serena Hotel, where the first round of talks took place, has been made ready to welcome the delegations once more. The only question that remains is, will they really arrive? And it isn't just Pakistan that is anxiously awaiting a confirmation of these talks.
Hearing now contradicting reports in the media. We are following very closely. We are quite concerned, and we're supportive of all the efforts of Pakistan, but I'll leave it at that. Obviously, if a deal is not reached, Qatar supports the current condition of the ceasefire, and we are aiming to see a continuation of the ceasefire until there is a diplomatic resolution. It is not in anyone's benefit to return to hostilities.
Gulf nations hosting American military assets were bombarded by Iran throughout this war. A peace deal is in their interest as well, because if it doesn't materialize, then they could be in the crosshairs once again. All right, let me welcome my guests on the show. Jason D. Greenblatt is a former White House Special Envoy to West Asia. He's joining us live on the broadcast from New Jersey. In fact, remember, Jason was a key player in building the foundation for the Abraham Accords. He's also written the book In the Path of Abraham, which focuses on Donald Trump's West Asian policy as well as the Abraham Accords. Jason, good evening. Welcome to WION. Can I start by asking you, since you're somebody who's been involved in American foreign policy vis-a-vis West Asia, Iran has been denying that they will not participate in these talks. Do you see that as a truthful, genuine statement, or do you see that as another tactic by Iran to sort of display that they're not taking part in American talks, but eventually they'll end up in Islamabad?
Well, thanks for having me. I think it's both a tactic, but also a sign that there's still infighting within the Iranian regime. There are some who want to make a deal. Whether that deal will be good or not, I'm not sure. But there are some who want to travel there and try to make a deal. And there are others who are saying no talks. And I think that would be a very foolish mistake, because President Trump has been clear that he could do this the easy way and the hard way. The easy way is making a diplomatic deal. The hard way, of course, is returning to war.
Jason, a short while back, Donald Trump gave the interview to a news channel where he said that the Iranian ship that the American forces had captured had, quote, a Chinese gift on it. You've got the Iranian authorities saying that they are ready with new cards to bring into the battlefield. Should and would the Trump administration and the United States be concerned about these statements?
Possibly, yes. I don't know what the gift is. I've heard the reference to it, but we're all guessing what that is. I think the Iranians have always touted their military prowess, and look, they've managed to amass quite a missile and drone army. They've caused some damage and destruction, but so far we haven't seen anything that has been terribly dramatic. I think the U.S. military combined with the Israeli military has done a remarkable job in pushing back the Iranian military capabilities. However, there's still a lot of work to do.
Jason, since you've been closely working with the Trump administration since the first presidency, I want to understand from you what you think of Donald Trump's strategy towards West Asia. Many believe that this is just an erratic approach that the U.S. president is deploying to deal with the West Asian, countries. There's also another set that believes that, look, this is a very well thought out pressure tactic that Donald Trump is applying, and he will reap the benefits of it.
Right. Not only do I believe it's well thought out, I think it's consistent with all of his public messaging since even before he became president the first time. He was very much against the JCPOA. He called it, in different formats, a very stupid deal, promised to rip it up, did actually rip it up. Remember, he's somebody who grew up at the time that Americans were held hostage in Tehran by this regime. And he understands that the Iranian regime is an enemy not only to our Gulf Arab allies and Israel and West Asia broadly, but to America and, of course, even to Europe. The Iranians have created a missile that reportedly could actually reach Europe. So he understands the threat, and that's why he is trying to take care of it. He's, I think, the first president who's much more about actions rather than just words.
Jason, if this is a well thought out strategy, how would you then explain the fact that many believe that there has been no concrete regime change in Iran? One of the first aims that the Trump administration had said when it waged this war against Iran, because executions are still taking place within Iran. There is still the Iranian authorities that are playing their own kind of pressure tactics on America. So what has Donald Trump achieved if this was a well thought out strategy?
I don't think regime change was at the top of the list ever. I think regime change is certainly desired, especially for the Iranian people who've suffered terribly under this regime. But I don't think it was the ultimate goal if it couldn't be achieved. And I think regime change is extremely difficult in a case like this. I think the real goals were, of course, the nuclear threat, the missile and the drone threat, and then once the war started, of course, now the Strait of Hormuz closure.
Quickly, before I let you go, Jason, the Abraham Accords, you're somebody who's been, deeply involved in setting the foundation of the Abraham Accords during the first presidency of Trump. When it comes to Israel, Donald Trump has said that it's not Prime Minister Netanyahu who has pressured me into it. This is my own decision. Do you think Israel now intervening in these peace negotiations and having some sort of say in them would have an impact at all?
Well, President Trump makes his own decisions. He does what's best for America. Of course, he takes into account things that are important for our allies, not just Israel, but our Gulf Arab allies who have been hammered, in particular in the UAE, who have been hammered by the Iranian regime. I think each of them should have a voice in President Trump's ear in terms of their concerns. But ultimately, President Trump is going to make his decision based on what's best for the United States.
All right, I'll leave it there. Jason Greenblatt, thanks very much for joining us on WION for this special conversation.
Thank you for having me.